Well, ladies and gentlemen, our pick'ems have been cooked. WTF happened at the Budapest Stage 1 of the Major. I'm still trying to figure it out myself, I'm going to be honest. I've watched all these games over on Kick alongside Anders. I'll put our links below. If you do want to hang out with us, we've been co-streaming over there. It's been a lot of fun. All of you are welcome. I'll put them in the links below in the description. So I have watched all these games, and it's been a bit of a blur of chaos and confusion and shocks and twists and turns and everything else, as you'd expect from Stage 1 of a Major. Look, where best of ones are concerned, you're always going to have upsets, right? I talked about this in my Pick'ems video. It's always going to be a possibility. This stage, I said, was tremendously difficult to predict because I had no faith in any of the teams to make it through at 3-0. I thought every team had a loss in them. I'm going to be using this video, by the way, as a summary of Stage 1, and then my next Pick'ems video will just be going straight into the next Pick'ems, right? I might mention a couple of results here and there because of my picks, but this is going to be more of the summary before the Pick'ems video comes out, which should be later today or tomorrow, whenever Valve lets the update happen. But into the past, I suppose. And it's also kind of into the present, because as I'm recording this video, the 2-2 matchups haven't happened yet. But for me, it doesn't really change that much because I think most of the surprises have happened so far. And I'm going to just straight up say it. Don't have any faith in FaZe. I don't. So if they lost to Fluxo, I wouldn't be surprised. If they beat Fluxo, I don't think it would make that much of a difference to me. Unless it was incredibly one-sided and I believed in the performance and it was like a totally different dominant look to FaZe. But I think for all intents and purposes, my hype for FaZe is practically zero as it stands right now. But let's have a quick discussion of how things have got to where we are right now. Just for those of you that maybe haven't had a chance to watch the Major, or, you know, you've just been dabbling now and again, but you don't really know what happened. So in 0-3, we have Rare Atom and Lyn Vision. Now, one of these, not that surprising, which is Rare Atom. I was on the board... Sorry, I was on the fence, I should say, of whether I should put them in my 0-3s or if I should go with the Huns and Red Cannons, and I went for the latter rather than the former. I did think Rare Atom would have just a little bit more to offer. It turned out they didn't. They got destroyed. They were very, very poor. They were looking horrible and deserved to be 0-3. The big surprise is Lyn Vision, because I had faith in Lyn Vision. I did have faith in them to make it through to the next stage. I'll actually show you real quick who I went for, so you can have a good giggle, a good laugh, although I think, to be honest, most people's pick'ems are straight up wrecked at this stage. If yours aren't, let me know. Who saved you? I think Rare Atom have probably saved a lot of people that went for 0-3 Rare Atom, to be fair. But I had Legacy and Power Vision as my 3-0 teams because I thought they came into this looking the sharpest. Didn't happen for either of them. And I had Huns and Red Cannons, and I'll get back into that in a second. Didn't happen for either of those either in a positive way. Lyn Vision, I had to make it through. And they were my fourth. So I was more confident in Lyn Vision than NIP or Fnatic, even though I was very confident with NIP in particular. So that is a disaster class, right, for Lyn Vision. And it's the way they lost as well. If you didn't get a chance to catch their games, the way they lost was so bad. I would actually argue they looked far worse than Rare Atom in this tournament. And I would argue, because Rare Atom had a couple of opportunities where they had leads and they just let it slip. Lyn Vision got crushed in all of their games. And I'll show you here in a moment just what I'm talking about. But this was one of the worst performances I've seen from a team at a Major collectively. Maybe ever. In recent memory, at least. And sure, maybe I'm a bit biased because I had them to progress through. So I was more keenly watching them. I was more keenly observing what was going on. But I honestly cannot give any excuses for this performance. Now, in the post-game interview, and by the way, I hate losers interviews. It's always just super uncomfortable. I don't like it as an idea, honestly, personally. You know, take that for what it's worth. But in the losers interview, Amelia, I think, broke down crying. And it was really sad to watch, honestly. Because, listen, as much as we like to meme and joke and get tilted and everything else about our pick'ems, who cares about the pick'ems at the end of the day, really? Who cares? It's just a virtual coin in the game. Like, it doesn't mean anything. It means everything to these players. This is their life. This is their passion. This is what they put their time, their effort, their energy into. This is what they live every second to be CS players, right? And so seeing him break down the way he did, it made me feel really shitty for him. Like, I genuinely had so much sympathy. At the end of the day, they weren't good enough. They knew it. They didn't hold any excuses. But he did say something that was really interesting. He said in the interview that they hadn't had any chance to practice in Europe. And they came straight from China, basically, to Europe to play the Major. If that's true, that's absurd. Like, I don't understand how you can be in a position to not boot camp in Europe before the major starts. Now, maybe that ends up being BS, and it's just, you know, he's either been mistaken or he, you know, English isn't his first language. Maybe something's been lost in translation there, maybe. But if that is true, that's insane. And they played like it. They played like a team that had not been boot camping. They played like a team that was not comfortable. They played like a team that was not on the same page. They were tripping over each other. Dust 2 in particular against the Huns, which they lost, by the way, 13-7, 13-8, against a team that went bombed out straight afterwards, 1-3, as everyone expected. A team that, for all intents and purposes, was one of the weakest teams here. They got styled on by the Huns. Dust 2 in particular was difficult to watch. The amount of mistakes, missed Molotovs, missed smokes, horrendous executes like pushing onto B with 15 seconds left when they had no map control, and the other team, the Huns, knew exactly what was coming up. It was watching boys against men. Like they got destroyed, they got dispatched so quick. But it's not just that. They lost against NIP 13-2. Now, I've got a lot of faith in NIP. I probably have more faith in NIP than most people do, and I understand why, because NIP recently has not been looking that good. But I still have tremendous faith in Snappy as an IGL. I think he's criminally underrated. I think Kaspersky is one of the best signings that any team has made recently. Not quite on Rops's level, don't get me wrong, but he is a phenomenal pickup for NIP, and he's been nothing short of fantastic for them throughout most of the tournament. He's probably one of the players to watch out for, him and Vexite, but I'll get back onto FlyQuest in a moment. He was incredible, but 13-2? Really? 13-2? You've been just humiliated. You were never in the game. A team that probably was the slight favourite going into it. You know, Lyn Vision, they've not been great since the last major, but they've been consistently playing against top-flight opposition and holding their own in some of those games, and he just got rolled over by NIP 13-2. That's where the warning signs came in. They lost to FaZe in the first game 13-5. It was another super close game. Frozen smurfed. Frozen's up there as well, by the way. He's one of the best players of the tournament so far. He has saved FaZe multiple times. We'll get back onto that as well in a few moments. But Lyn Vision, the fact that they got battered by every team and then got humiliated by the Huns, 13-7, 13-8, didn't even get double digits, which means in total they got, what, 15, 17... They got, what, 22 rounds, over 4 maps. 22 rounds over 4 maps. Like, that's, how do you justify that? That's remarkably bad, right? Like, that's so bad. It's just wild. And I don't know how to explain it. Like, they were shocking. That was the biggest surprise for me, probably, at the entire major, how bad Lyn Vision were. Let's go to some positives. Let's talk about FlyQuest and M80. FlyQuest in particular, I was talking about Vexite. This is a guy who's only 21, right? From the Oceania region. He's been touted now for a while. A lot of like Oceania experts, pundits, players, ex-players have said Vexite's the next guy. He's going to be that next Oceania player that is going to take the world by storm. He is so legit as a player, and we haven't really ever seen him reach that mantle. We've seen glimpses, we've seen flashes. Well, this stage was the Vexite show. Like, they smacked up Legacy in the first game, which was really surprising to me because I had Legacy as a 3-0. Did I think they could drop a map? Absolutely. But I didn't think it would be to FlyQuest. Even though I did talk about FlyQuest in my Pick'ems video as a potential final pick instead of Fnatic. I'm glad I didn't do that because FlyQuest 3-0'd and Fnatic did go through. But Vexite smurfed it. 1.77 rating was a huge factor as to why FlyQuest won that game. Next game comes in, Imperial. Who's at the top again? It's your boy Vexite, 1.59. Regali, also performing really well. And then against Fluxo, it's Regali and Vexite at the top of the scoreboard. This duo has been incredible for FlyQuest, and I'll straight up say, yes, they only beat South American teams, but Legacy are up there. I mean, all 3 of the teams they beat, by the way, currently have the capabilities of making it through. So Fluxo could beat FaZe. They could beat FaZe, genuinely. Imperial probably should beat NRG, and Legacy could absolutely win against Paravision. So you could have a situation where FlyQuest's 3 games they won were against teams that are going to meet them in the next stage of the major. It doesn't get much more legit than that, right? It just doesn't. M80, in the meanwhile, start off with a super legit run of their own. They beat Bait in the first game. It was a close one, 13-11, I think. Yes, they beat Bait. Really good performance. They beat Paravision. This is another team that a lot of people, myself included, thought would do very well. And they did it 13-9. And then they beat NRG. NRG's run has been kind of stellar. I know a lot of people when they saw that Daps was going to be coming in, a retired player for Nitro. Obviously, Daps is their coach, so he has a lot of the protocols. He knows what's happening. But it's a very different style. Like, this is something I don't think he's getting enough credit for. It's not just that he's a retired player that's not been actively playing in teams and in, like, you know, leagues and all these kinds of things. It's that his focus to try and improve and try and work on is now coaching as opposed to being a leader in game. They're two very different things. As a coach, you can sit back there and kind of have an overview of what's happening. You have more time to dissect, okay, this is what's going on. I'm looking at this player now from this perspective. I'm thinking about strategies of potential ways that we can try and deal with the opposition. But you're not in the moment yourself. You're not focusing on mechanics. And yes, I know IGLs often are the bottom fraggers, but they're still on the server. They're still shooting. They're still trying to hit their shots. They're still trying to be a difference maker when it boils down to it. If you're in a 1v1, you're fully focused on your mechanics. It's a very different skill set. And so a lot of people, myself included, I didn't put NRG in my 0-3 because I thought they'd still win a map. But a lot of people don't realize just how spectacular this is from Daps to make the moves from coach to IGLing and to have this level of performances. And he had a couple of really good maps individually where he was actually towards the top of the scoreboard. Like, so much credit to Daps. I think, unfortunately, the best of threes is probably where they come undone. And you've kind of seen that so far. They went from 2-0 to 2-2. A loss against M80, a loss against Fnatic. Fair enough, both solid teams. And Imperial, it's a winnable game, but I'd probably go slightly in favor of Imperial for this. They're such a veteran team. Like, they've been around so many times. They always somehow seem to make it to the later stages of the major against all the odds. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did it again. But a part of me hopes NRG win purely for the story, purely for Daps. And Nitro obviously watching on. And it's been very impressive. I've got to say M80 and FlyQuest absolutely deserve the 3-0. They've both been very, very interesting to watch. And I wouldn't put it past them to make it to Stage 3. The way they played, sure, the opposition should technically get better now in Stage 2. You've got the Liquids, the Na'Vis, the Auroras, etc. of this world. So I don't think it's going to be as easy. But I was so impressed with how they both played that I don't think that there's going to be any easy games for teams against them, especially when you're starting in best of ones all over again. And they're warmed up. That's the other thing. They've been at the tournament now for a week or whatever. They've been playing. They know what to expect. They're going to be more dialed in. They're going to be more warm. And that's always going to give them, in my opinion, a bit of an advantage over the teams that are coming in and finding their way. So I think that's really an interesting thing to watch out for going into the next stage. The 3-1 teams, NIP, Bait, and Fnatic, I called all three of these. I thought that they were all going to be making it through. A lot of people will call me crazy for having Fnatic in especially, but I'm like, now the core of this old Passion UA roster with Casmo, Jambo, and Fia, I have a lot of faith in this. Blamef is still a really good player. Crims can still do a job. Bait were very impressive. Kenzizer in particular, I think, had a really good tournament so far. NIP, Kaspersky's are not animal. Snappy's been great. Wrinkle showing us signs. We also have Shush and Ujux behind them. It's a really solid core for rifling. But that's enough positives for now. Let's get onto some of the negatives. GamerLegion. Oh, bro. This one stings, dude, because I've got so much respect for Ash, and I really want to see GamerLegion do well. I had them to make it through. I'll show you again. I had them to make it through at actually my second most likely to make it through at the 3-1-3-2s. So it stings to see them down in 1 and 3, but they deserve to be 1 and 3, like straight up. The one team they beat was Rare Atom to put them in the 3-0 category. And yeah, it was pretty one-sided. I mean, Rare Atom were just outmatched, as they should have been against GamerLegion. But I mean, GamerLegion lost to Fluxo 13-10, should never have lost that game. Then they lost to the Red Canids, dude, 13-6. And this is the game that I was watching where I was like, really? Like, I get it, okay? The Red Canids came into this tournament with a certain lack of pressure. You know, no one expected them to do anything. I had them 0-3. A lot of people had them 0-3. A lot of the Brazilian experts and South American experts were like, this isn't a team that's probably going to do anything. Look at Legacy, Fluxo, Imperial. Look at these teams instead. Like, Red Canids, they ain't it, Chief, right? And so there's just no pressure on these guys whatsoever to perform. But they annihilated GamerLegion. Rez had a horrible game individually. He's not had a very good tournament overall, to be honest. You expect more from Rez, the way he's been playing as of late. They looked all over the place. They looked lost, in truth, against the Red Canids. And obviously that wrecked one of my 0-3s. But where it got even worse for me was watching them against Paravision. Now, Paravision are a way better team. Don't get me wrong. I had them as 3-0. Coming into this tournament, they were on an incredible win streak. They were looking really, really good. And they may still make it, to be fair. This might be a bit of a couple of shocks and twists and turns. But you have to also take into account that their losses have been to the hands of M80, who 3-0'd. They lost to Bait, who's just a really good team as well. So you look at this Paravision squad and you think, yeah, you're down in the 1 and 2s, but like your run was pretty rough. You probably should have been winning them, don't get me wrong. But your run was pretty rough, and it's not like you've been completely wrecked by anybody. Some disappointing results, but like a 13-11 loss here. You had a 13-9 loss here, where you probably should have done better. But you also did, you know, beat the Huns 13-8 and look pretty convincing. This game, I was watching this, and I felt so much second-hand anxiety watching Ash. He's got a stress ball in his hand, or a squash ball or something. I'm not entirely sure what it was. I think it was a stress ball. You see him watching on as his team flub and fumble multiple clutches in a row, get picked apart from Jame the entirety of both maps, but especially in Ancient I'm talking about here. This is a game that GamerLegion could have easily won 2-0. Straight up. They had opportunities. They had the capabilities of doing it. Unfortunately, Towson had a really off game. Hypex had a couple of amazing moments, a couple of really big clutches, especially in Ancient. He pulled off a 1v3 that basically saved GamerLegion. But overall, didn't have that much impact. Was kind of just chugging along. Jame had way, way more impact than him. ZTR is the top performing player over the duration of these two maps. They're IGL. A guy that shouldn't be nowhere near the top of the scoreboard. But it's not just about the stats. It's the nature and how they lost. And I watched this game very closely because if GamerLegion had won this, by the way, my pick'ems could have been saved. Right? It would have gone to today, but they could have been saved. I could have still got 5. But at the end of the day, it's a visual coin. I don't care that much. Really. I genuinely don't. It's a bit of fun. I'm watching. I'm like, please, it would be great to get Diamond, but whatever. The amount of clutches they lost, dude. Like, Jame gets a defuse in the smoke on Donut, and they shoot the wrong guy. They're not peeking together. They're not firing together as a 2. They lose that round. There's a round where Rez is in a 1v2 and Donut again pulls a grenade out, and then he stalls for a second, doesn't peek, throws the nade, the full defuse comes through. The amount of times that they went for an execute onto middle or B, and they really like overcomplicated things, and they tripped over themselves only to get shut down by a double stack in cave. The amount of times where Jame is pulling off the most perfect reads. I've got to say, Jame was phenomenal. You can throw all the memes at him you want. You can you know, troll him all you want about Jame time and everything else. The guy is a fantastic AWPer. He's not the most flashy. He's not the most versatile. He's not the most mechanically skilled. But his read of the game is so above most other players. It's insane. You watch him play that game. I want to go back and watch his POV. You watch him play that game, and how perfectly and effortlessly and methodically he was finding the right times and right moments to peak the right angles to allow rotations to come in. It was a thing of beauty. I was watching that game with so much respect for Jame. I already had respect for him, but even more respect for how he played the game. His team's not very fun to watch. I'll be real. It can be incredibly tedious. Sometimes his CT sides, and this has been a factor, to be fair, his CT sides were kind of saved statistically in this game against GamerLegion, but up until this point, his CT sides were very lackluster. They were not dynamic enough. They were not taking fights to other teams, not pushing out, you know, on overpass through, on short through, out on banana from the perspective of the CTs I'm talking about here, obviously, getting control of the connector. This is something that we just haven't seen from him, but we did see it today against GamerLegion, and it was enough to get the W. But the way he played was nothing short of spectacular. Like, they deserved the win, but at the same time, GamerLegion played so far below their level. They did not look well orchestrated. They did not look like a well-oiled machine. Key players dropped off the edge of a cliff at horrible moments. PR had a really good Ancient, but a very poor overpass. Towson was just a non-factor in either of the maps. Rez had a very poor overpass. Sorry, a very poor Ancient in particular, but wasn't much better on overpass. And so they deserved to lose, but it was a very frustrating watch, and I could feel the frustration for Ash, you know, like having to watch on as his team just continued to fumble and lose rounds they really should be winning. GamerLegion were very disappointing, I have to say. I expected far better from them. I don't know where this roster goes from here. There's been rumours about potential changes. It wouldn't surprise me if those changes come in. For me, GamerLegion had to hit Stage 2, Stage 3 bare minimum. I think it's a team that would have been looking for playoffs, realistically. I know it maybe sounds ridiculous now. They've gone 1-3 and they only beat, what, Rare Atom, who were the 0-3 team. Like, it's grim. It's really, really grim for GamerLegion, but ultimately they deserve to be 1-3. Let's talk about FaZe. Let's talk about FaZe. My goodness. Great start. Smash Lyn Vision 13-5. And I'm thinking, okay, it's FaZe. Yes, they've had their troubles. Yes, they've had their recent roster changes. A lot of scrutiny over Brokey. That whole debacle with, we've dropped him, we'll try out Simple, no, we'll pick him back up again. Apparently, he said that they contacted him during the Austin Major to get him back, which is kind of crazy to me. I don't know if I'm misunderstanding this, but does that not suggest that they're playing with Simple, but then saying to Brokey, let's get you back in the team again? Like, what? Maybe I've misunderstood that. Maybe that's just some BS that's floating out there. But that to me is so strange. But the whole Brokey situation hasn't really fared well at this major. He's been very, very rough. You look at his game against Lyn Vision, 1.22, but you smashed it, right? So take that with a pinch of salt. NRG, 1.63. You then go through to NIP, 1.79. This is Europa, by the way. This is Europa. Then you go against Red Canids, 0.88. And I'll talk about that more in a second. This 0.88 would be so much lower if it weren't for the fact on Inferno they beat them 13-5 and Brokey actually had one of the top amounts of kills. Going into the last map, he had like a 0.7 rating. So in none of the games, apart from the game where they smashed Lyn Vision, who by the way crashed and burned 0-3. So is that really that spectacular? Not really. And Frozen was 2.03. And Frozen's by far and away been their best player at this tournament. It's not even close. Twist has had a pretty bad event overall, I'd have to say. But you had one positive map where you weren't really required that much because you just straight up wrecked the other team. This is the game, right? Like we can kind of ignore the fact they got beat by NIP. NIP, legit team. I got a lot of faith in these guys. I've already discussed that. This was the game where any faith I had for FaZe just fell away. Yes, they won 2-1. Yes, they had a very convincing 13-5 Inferno. They should have lost this game 2-0. Now, anyone watching this right now that saw the game will know what I'm talking about, right? But for those of you that haven't seen the game, they lost Mirage 13-7 and it was a bloodbath. They were never in the game. It was incredibly one-sided. Red Canids looked like they were the more experienced team. They had the more star players. Like Che Jesus and Drop in particular were just smurfing on them. They were just having the easiest time. It was the weirdest map, the flattest map. And I thought, wow, are FaZe really about to just get wrecked and like bow out 0-2 and go out 1-3 in the stage 1 of the major? Not even the biggest like FaZe hater or like FaZe memer, which I'm neither, by the way. I want to see FaZe do well. I've got a lot of love for some of these guys on the team. But not even the biggest detractor of FaZe could have foreseen that happening, right? Like, most people thought, yeah, FaZe will probably go like 3-1, 3-2, or maybe they'll just show up and they'll go 3-0. Nobody saw this. When they got the draw of Red Canids, everyone thought, right, here we go. FaZe are going to smurf this game. Go next. This nuke was 6-6 at halftime, I want to say. I think around 6-6. It was very close. Then Red Canids start the second half in winning ways. They start to extend the lead. It's starting to look like maybe they can get this done. Frozen individually carried super hard on Nuke. He dropped like 40 kills in the end. Actually, let me have a look at this, because I want to make sure I get this right, because I need you guys to understand just how dominant Frozen was. Frozen had 39 frags, 10 multi-kill rounds, was 11-2 in opening duels. You barely ever see that stat, by the way. Anything over like 7 or 8 opening duels, and I know went into OT, don't get me wrong, but anything over 7 or 8 opening duels in your favor is insane. 11-2 with 10 multi-kill rounds, 112 ADR. He's averaging more than a kill per round in damage. 1.96 rating with a 7.8 swing. This is straight up smurfing. This is smurf territory, right? And although Twists did pick it up towards the end, at one point he was also miles away and still didn't get even close to Frozen. Jacob is down at 22 frags. Brokey's just not really a factor. This was a remarkable carry performance from Frozen. And without this, FaZe right now are eliminated from the major. Straight up. But it's worse than that. Red Canids should have still won despite Frozen carrying his ass off. This went to 12-10. They had 2 opportunities to get it done. Crazy clutches from FaZe. Some ridiculous mid-round calling with 15 seconds left. They call from B site. They're going to hit A. They go up. They get a couple of win trades out on vents. Realistically, Red Canids, I think at this point, got on their own heads. They started to choke a little bit. They started to throw the game a little bit. They should have won this game. But where it's really damning, where it's really, really damning. 12-11. I think it's Che Jesus. The bomb is down on B site. It was a 1v2. Brokey misses his shot. He dies. I could be wrong about Che Jesus, but I think it was him. It's a 1v1. The bomb is down on B site. Carrigan's on ramp, and the bomb's not planted for him. It's in that like little tight alcove where the door used to be before it got changed back again, where the water cooling and everything is, right? And the bomb is not planted for Carrigan. Che Jesus runs across, goes for the defuse, and there's just seconds left on the clock. Seconds left on this defuse, and he's got a kit, and he's defusing. Carrigan wide swing, one taps him to save the day, milliseconds. He had a smoke. Che Jesus had a smoke. He could have smoked the site. He could have defused in the smoke. I don't think Carrigan at that point lands the shot. That would have been 13-11. That would have been Red Cannons winning 2-0, and FaZe would have been eliminated from the major. They'd have been gone. And they should have been gone. And I think they didn't recover after that point. They got smurfed on Inferno. It was super one-sided. They got steamrolled. But I think Red Cannons had just, like, their mental had just popped at that stage. They knew how close they were to causing this upset, to knocking FaZe out of the major. One of the worst performances at a major in FaZe's history. I think they've had a couple of worse ones, but not by much. And that was just unbelievable entertainment, but also, like, just watching shocked and stunned at how bad FaZe were. Like, they should have been knocked out of the major, guys. Straight up. They're playing on house money at this point. I have no faith in them, guys. Like, straight up. No faith. Because Red Cannons are a very ordinary team. One of the weakest teams at the major. No disrespect to them, but they just are. That's just a fact of the matter. They went out 1-3. They probably shouldn't have beat GamerLegion. GamerLegion were horrible. And they could have easily gone 0-3, right? But FaZe nearly lost to them as well. So I could go into other teams, but for the sake of brevity, we'll wrap this up now. I'll show you my fantasy league as well, team. I did back Paravision because I wanted to back the teams that I put through at 3-0. And Legacy were too expensive. It's probably for the best I didn't go for Legacy. They're playing against each other. Jamin's Yellow have done really good. Kenzai's was amazing for me. 107 points for Bait, just straight up smurfing. And Snappy, 77 points, incredible. Very glad that I backed NIP the way I did. Brokey 0... -6. Yeah, most expensive player on -6. Mistake on my part. I don't know why I went for Brokey. Do you know what really hurts? Do you know what really hurts? I'd be like top 1, top 2% if I'd gone for Kaspersky instead. And I wish I had. And he was 10,000 cheaper. It is what it is. You live and learn. In terms of the games, by the way, I expect that Imperial beat NRG. I'll go FaZe, but honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if Fluxo win. And then this is a really close game. This is going to be the pick of the day, I think. It's a 50-50 to me, but I think the way and how Paravision handled themselves with that calmness from yesterday, I might just slightly go in favor of Paravision to get that W. As I say, I'm recording this before these games take shape. For all I know, as you watch this later, the games have already been played, and maybe I'm wrong on all 3 of these. Wouldn't surprise me the way this major has gone. So that is WTF happened at the stage 1 of the Budapest Major. I'll be making a Pick'ems video as soon as it releases for stage 2. The Diamond Dream is dead. It's fine. Gold looks better anyway, right, guys? Right? I'll see you in the next video.